Take2 TV. Galvanizing, lyrical, soulful, captivating, entertaining. Take2 TV. Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Good evening and welcome to Take2 TV. I'm Tanya Wilson, your host, and I am so excited tonight. On the other side of the interview chair is Mr. Ron Holland. You will probably recognize the voice and the face from Praise 100 and 105.3 Old School.
And R&B.
And R&B.
Yeah.
How could I, that's my kind of music. So I had the pleasure of doing Community Voices with you.
Yes.
And it was such a great time. I had the opportunity to talk about some of the things that I'm doing, and I so appreciate that you are. I got you, coerced you to come over.
It wasn't a coercion,
But in any event, I was wondering, I was thinking about radio. Mm-hmm. And I did a little radio, certainly not to your level, but I dabbled in it. But what really, when you were thinking about career, mm-hmm. what motivated you? What said, I'm going into radio?
Well, prior to my transition into radio, I was a reporter, a print reporter.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, Maureen Nevins, this was back in 2001.
Okay.
And she had asked if I would come down to the station and do an interview of her and sort of get a feel for what she does in radio. So I went down to the station, and I absolutely fell in love with radio from that point forward. And it was just amazing to see her craft, to see the work that she put into preparing for the show. It was amazing to me. Now, I listened to radio, being an activist, if you will. Some of the radio stations in New York I was an avid listener of. But it wasn't until I visited the radio station, 88.1 FM WYGG. When I visited that radio station and her program, I was in love from that point forward.
Now, did you drop reporting cold turkey to transition to radio, or how did that work?
It wasn't cold turkey. If you remember 2001, of course, we had the September 11th terror attacks.
Yes.
And it was literally a month later. I had presented a proposal to the radio station that I do a show, and it was called Let's Talk News. And so it was at that point where I was actually doing the transition. I was writing for the Asbury Park Press, which is the second largest daily newspaper in New Jersey. And so I made that transition at that time, and it's been in radio ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're Facebook friends.
Yes.
And so I know there are a number of things that you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
And we're not even going into yesterday's election.
Oh.
It would take longer than this 30-minute show to talk about that. But think about the platforms that you're passionate about. Mm. How has your career in radio helped to propel those things?
Well,
or are they separate?
No, it's not separate. Interestingly, I've always been involved in politics. It's sort of my bailiwick. I just love politics. And so, being at 100.9 and 105.3, I am the public affairs director. So it gives me an opportunity to talk about issues that are important to the community. So one of the things that I'm absolutely adamant about is exposing and providing the airways for individuals who want to have their voices heard. Mm-hmm. And so via radio, via social media, I have an opportunity to talk about issues important to the community.
Right.
And so that's what the platform allows me. Radio has done such a great job in making sure that the voices of the community is heard. Mm-hmm. In public affairs, that's what I do.
Yeah. I obviously getting ready to be on the show, Community Voices, I went back and looked at a number of the shows that are posted. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as I pay attention to who's coming up next, mm-hmm. I get an opportunity to go and watch those shows, and being sort of the community services brat, following my dad's, community involvement, that show is very significant, because it introduces, like you said, to the community so many things that I wonder if it were not there, would you have that opportunity as a viewer to know something about it?
Sure. Well, the interesting thing is I try to challenge people to become a little bit more averse to what is happening in the community. And my challenge to radio as well, as much as we do in the community, it's always a challenge to get folks to understand how critical it is. Particularly when you have folks who are avid watchers of what's happening in government. And so I want to arm people with information. And if I don't have the information, my responsibility is to bring folks on the airways to articulate what is happening in the community.
Right.
That is my job, to make sure that the community is aware of what's happening, particularly and especially holding our elected officials accountable.
And how do you feel, if you were going to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective do you think Community Voices has been?
Well, a couple of weeks ago I was honored by the CUC 100 LLC.
I saw that.
Pictures. And what was interesting and was heartening to me is that folks do recognize the work that I'm doing in the community. But I'm from Asbury Park, New Jersey, and so there were many instances where folks who were pulling me aside and saying, "Listen, Ron, I listen to your show often, and I am really proud of the work that you're doing." And I take that to heart because, again, I understand what my responsibility is to the community.
Yeah, and the thing I really love about you is you're very sincere.
Thank you.
And that is, believe it or not, is sort of hard to really come by. And one of the things that has struck me about you is your sincerity about the platforms that you feel passionate about, one of which is your family.
Oh, absolutely.
And your lovely wife. Hello, lovely wife. And so you work a lot.
Yes.
In radio.
Yes.
And, other things that you have going on that we'll talk a little bit about later. How do you manage work-life balance?
That's an interesting question. My wife and I, we've been together for 31 years. We've been married for 26 years. We have 3 beautiful children. And she allows room and space for me to do what I do. And anytime there is a dream or a goal or objective, she is there right with me, not behind me, not in front of me. She's there with me, holding my hands and really backing everything that I try to do and accomplish in life. And with that, you have to strike a balance because you want to make sure you're spending a lot of time with your children and of course, my lovely wife. And as you know, she's fine.
Yes.
That's a fine woman.
Yes, and I love the way. Let me just tell you. Now, what is her name? I know Badia.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me tell you. I just love the way you both love each other. And you're so complimentary, and you are beautiful.
She's fine. I'm sorry, I can't say beautiful. She's fine.
You can say fine. I can say beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how fine sounds with a woman saying, but you're beautiful.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so it's so refreshing, particularly in these days and times that we live in, where we can really, really compliment each other, see couples really, giving those props to each other, supporting each other. I think it's a really, really great model for the community to see.
Absolutely.
Right?
It is a man's responsibility not only to put his wife on a pedestal, but also help her achieve her goals and her dreams. And,
maybe I need to go to Asbury Park. Charlotte, well, we gonna keep it moving over here. I don't have any brothers saying that, but okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know you, in addition to radio, calisthenics.
Yeah.
Now, where did that come from? Now, I know martial arts, but calisthenics?
Yeah, listen, I've been in martial arts since I was 13. And as you when you're on my Facebook or my Instagram, you can see I have the high kicks and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, and I'm not sure if I should mention his name. He's actually out of Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And they call him Hannibal for King. And he is into calisthenics. In fact, he is probably one of the most avid calisthenics kings in this country. And I saw a video on YouTube. And I watched his workout regimen, and I'm like, okay, I want to do that. But I weigh 225 pounds, so I'm working hard to get to that level. It's a challenge, but I'm getting there. And I just started it this year, by the way.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, you seem to, at least on Facebook, it looks like you're really getting it in.
I'm getting it in, but it's a challenge.
So aside from calisthenics and martial arts, radio and family balance and all that, let me just digress for a second. Did you eat the candy bar that you
Yes, I ate it. I'm sorry, I killed that candy bar.
So on Facebook, his brother-in-law, his lovely wife's brother, was visiting and left his Snicker bar.
Yeah.
This gentleman here sends him a picture of the frozen candy bar. So, I don't know.
Well, I did some extra push-ups and some jumping jacks. I was able to do some pull-ups and some dips, so I worked it off.
Make it count, right? So aside from all that, one of the things that was so exciting about our time spent together was discovering you were also an author.
Yes.
And so we were able to connect in that space. And you've got some great things going on there.
Yeah.
And I learned that you wrote a book.
Yes,
So
The Fire in My Words.
About that. So tell me about that book.
Yeah, The Fire in My Words, the anthology of a social provocateur. And it was probably 2 years in the making, although some of what I've written in the book probably goes back a lot further than that. But one of the interesting things is I write about religion and politics and social issues. There's some poetry at the end of the book that I've written years ago. But I wanted to challenge folks, particularly in the Christian community, to abandon the idea that they only have access to God. And that was a significant challenge for me because I grew up Christian. So I address a lot of issues with regard to religion in the book, and of course our cultural situations in this country. We have a lot of discussion about social issues in the book, and I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, first of all, the title is powerful.
Yeah, The Fire.
And, anything connected to fire means passion.
That's right.
And 2 years of writing a book and having written one, I know that's not easy.
Oh, it isn't, but you know what? The journey is well worth taking.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when the first box of those books arrived in the mail, I was so excited. It was an extraordinary feeling.
Now, if someone is wanting to get a copy of that book, and you brought it, I'm going to hold it up.
All right.
Ron's book. How will they do that?
Well, you can log on to Amazon.com, and the book is available there. Or, of course, you go onto my website, Authors and Writers LLC. I'm really excited about that. I don't know if we have enough time to discuss
Absolutely. That's where I was going next.
Yeah. So it's available again on Amazon.com and my website, AuthorsandWritersLLC.com.
Yes. So talk a little bit about that. I am a member of that.
Yes, you are.
And that was one of the things that we talked about when we first met. So talk a little bit about and I know you're working with your wife on that, right? What was your motivation to start that, launch it rather, and what do you want to accomplish? I know there's an event coming up, and what is your goal long term even?
I've always had a passion for reading. Listen, I have in my library probably about 350 books, probably a lot more. And so my goal is to develop or at least reinvigorate a passion for reading with regard to the public. Becoming an author, the challenges of being an author in terms of getting your book out there. But I wanted to bring authors, writers, and book lovers together. Absolutely. This reinvigoration of reading reading is just important to me, because when you open up a good book, and that book takes you on a journey, it's something that I absolutely love. And then, you know, the other part of my book is I have a passion for words. I like the way words sound. I like the way words roll off the tongue and off the lips. It's an extraordinary feeling. And so I wanted to sort of convey that to the public, that this is something that we should be doing. I know it's, you know, we hold these, the iPads and the computers and the cell phones in our hands. The technology is in my judgment, is beneficial. But at the end of the day, when you open up a book and you can feel the pages, I want people to experience that. And for some reason, I think we've lost that.
No, I would agree with you. You know, that is something that I have always enjoyed, going to a bookstore. And it's just, for me.
Well, I can tell you this, one of the freedoms that my wife used to have is when I went to Books A Million and spent a couple of hours there, so she had a house to herself. I just like sitting down and just, you know, particularly if I didn't want to buy a book, I just sit down at Books A Million and just read.
And it's so sad because so many of the bookstores have closed. I know that, I don't know about Books A Million, but I know there are a couple of Barnes and Nobles, but they've really, you know, really downsized and closed a lot of their stores. You can still get a few things online if you can't, you know, if it's not convenient. But I agree with you, that holding that book is just a passion of mine as well. I like using the yellow highlighter.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you know, that's a whole experience. Whole experience. So the event that's coming up that I'm going to be participating in. Now, is that open?
Well, well, you have to purchase the ticket. It's on eventbrite.com. And I should say, Authors and Writers LLC, this is our inaugural event. It's jazz, wine, and the spoken word. And of course, it's taking place next Saturday at Freshwater's Southern and New Orleans Cuisine, 516 North Graham Street. And so I'm bringing in a bunch of authors. They're going to talk about their books. They're going to do some reading and some performances. And so we're excited about it.
Right. Now, whenever I have the pleasure of having someone on the show, has there been a time, now, you know, we've talked a lot about a lot of great things, but has there ever been a time that you just felt like, you know what, I don't feel like going any further with this, I'm just going to throw it out and move past it? Because my book talks about steps to rejoining your life and encouraging people not to stop where it happened. So has there ever been a time that you really may not have stayed there long, but just sort of thought, you know what?
If you remember 2008, 2009, when our economy was tanking, at that point, you know, my family, we started to struggle financially. And I remember probably 2010, I enrolled in the Carolina School of Broadcasting. So I was taking classes there, and we were having a really challenging financial time, which caused me to actually seek assistance from the Crisis Assistance Ministry. And I remember standing on line there because our gas had been shut off. And I remember standing on line with tears in my eyes. There was probably 100 people ahead of me and 200-300 behind me seeking assistance at that time. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm Ron Holland. You know, I've interviewed governors, I've interviewed senators and congresspeople, folks on the, you know, elected officials on all levels of government. I know some folks. And here I am standing on line seeking assistance to get my gas turned back on. And I remember the tears streaming down my face, and it was hard. It was hard. I wanted to give up, but I knew I couldn't. And I made a commitment that day that I was going to have someone from the Crisis Assistance Ministry on my radio show. Now, I wasn't working in radio at the time, and I did not know that ultimately I would be working for Radio 1 Charlotte. And you know, that following year, after I graduated from the Carolina School of Broadcasting, and they asked me if I would do the public affairs program, I had a person on the Crisis Assistance Ministry on my show. And so that's how you turn things around. You don't give up. You just have to be persistent at your goals and objectives.
Yeah, well, that is a powerful, powerful story. And it makes the point, right?
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
you know, I often say people see you or see me, see you, any of us, and think that's where it began, and everything is always great.
Oh.
And, you know, they don't know the stories.
That's right.
The journey.
Right. Oh.
Well,
yeah.
I tell you, it has been just phenomenal having you on.
Thank you.
I appreciate you joining me. If you can just repeat your website, because I want people to pick up a copy of the book, and I think it's an exciting read. I'm going to do the same.
All right.
And
authorsandwritersllc.com, as well as amazon.com, where you can purchase the book.
Okay.
Again, The Fire in My Words, the anthology of a social provocateur.
Oh my
Very
goodness.
provocative.
Okay. Well, and one last question. Why a New Orleans restaurant? I didn't even know they had one here.
I'm sorry?
New Orleans cuisine. I didn't even know they had
And
one
listen,
outside of, what is the one? I can't think of it.
Well, there are several others, but you know, I had an opportunity as I was looking for venues to visit there.
Okay.
And listen, you might want to wear some warm-up pants that day, because once you finish eating, you have to stretch a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure having you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
right.
I appreciate you.
Remember, every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, you can watch Take2 TV on Fire Stick, Roku TV, Apple TV, WBND TV, and on my website, take2now.net. Until next week, don't stop where it happened.
Take2 TV. Galvanizing, lyrical, soulful, captivating, entertaining. Take2 TV. Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. 30 minutes to real life, real life, real life. Real life people, real life stories, real life victories. Only on WBNDTV.com, Fire Stick, Roku TV, and Apple TV. Take2 TV.
My protector, you are a shield for me.